Hello.
Howdy, how you all doing?
All good. Yet another week in a hotel room.
Oh, the joys.
At least it's the customer engagement this week.
Ah, very good.
A team that does everything with CI/CD, logs, and so on, and they are called developer enablement because platform engineering team was already taken.
Hang on. What's my t-shirt, my free t-shirt say today? It's all about the DevX.
Where did you get that one?
I'm still cycling through my KubeCon clothes. I have to say, Abby's here. My Syntasso socks they were okay. The Dagger ones were the best quality ones.
Got them somewhere. I've got the dagger one somewhere in here. All right. I'll pass this note back. Oh, those are thick.
Oh, they're
Those are
very. Oh
thick.
no, those are different ones than I got.
These are dagger. They're dagger.
Ah,
Yeah,
But they
okay.
are thick. I'm
I
sure they're
got
the same brand. They're just like a different design or something. Very nice.
The
I
ones I
had my
got from
pile of
Rejet.
swag for the office. I got ill, so I couldn't bring it in this week. So it'll be next week.
Yeah. I've got all my crap upstairs still to sort through.
Yeah.
It got dumped in the bedroom, and my wife's now going, "You're going to put your shit away." At some point.
like when I went to Paris, my bag was fully packed, and I managed to squeeze in, was it 5 or 6 t-shirts, 2 pairs of socks, and all other sorts of things, and my bag was just like all stretched out.
See, the only word I've got for that, Stefan, is amateur.
I need to travel light.
No, you won't have seen Kat and some of the others from Syntasso that were there. I mean, they were on a mission for filling an extra bag.
Oh. If I went to the US, I would probably fill an extra bag
I
with
did.
beer and resell it at home.
I did.
Yeah.
I came back with an extra bag. But to be fair, my bag got lost, so I had to go and buy some extra clothes, and then it got found. So,
Oh, how sad.
yeah.
Hello.
Hello, all. All right. Anyone know what we're doing here? I asked that only halfway facetiously, because I'm genuinely asking. I was obviously unable to make last week. I wasn't feeling well. So, but I've gotten feedback over the last couple of times that we've done this, that there is like question marks of like, oh, good, Corbin's here as well. So I'll restart, but question marks of like how, whether or not this experiment of half-hour weeklies are doing what we want them to do. And so I think, we've tried, I think this is our third one, which isn't a lot, but we can also do fast feedback, right? And like make sure that they're effective and we're getting what we want out of it. So the first thing I want to ask today is, in 26 minutes, when we all head off for our breakfast, lunch, or dinner, depending on where in the world you are, you like, be what will we have in hand that we don't have right now that we think we're going to get from this meeting? And if we can confirm that for today without trying to think of like, how is that going to be for the rest of our lives? Like, that's great. But if we struggle with that for today, then I might propose that we think about spending today on how do we make these things work for us, right? So can anyone tell me what they think we're going to leave in 26 minutes with that will be an effective use of the next period of time for us today?
So what we discussed last week was going through investment. So trying to start moving leftward, from left to right through the doc. I had committed a few more questions. I added some to investment. And I think the goal is to at least decide that we have a draft of a section and then be able to move on. And I'd say at the end of it, we would have said, yes, we're comfortable with the draft or not. And I still think we need to get people to start raising their hand and committing to adding questions because the rest of the sections are pretty well blank. There's a few questions here and there. And what I would say is I would like to go through the questions personally and say, and I went through the doc just now, trying to determine, do we have questions that cover a given level? Like, can we decide, regardless of scoring or anything like that, are we actually addressing each level enough with the questions that are there? So that when we come up with scoring or figuring out questions between sections or anything, that we can say we have that. So that's, you know, our stated goal was to get through a section, and that's my additional way of saying that we've done it. Does anyone agree or disagree?
No, I think that's what we agreed. It was supposed to be a section
Okay.
per meeting.
Yep.
I just wasn't sure which one we were supposed to be looking at because
The only one that actually
life
has
got
any
in the way.
content.
That's a good point. Yeah. So the homework for next week then, is it next week or is it no? It's the week after. 2
Every
weeks
week.
time.
Every week.
Every week.
It's every
right.
week.
Okay.
Yeah.
So homework for next week is adoption.
Yep.
It's good to take that away, right?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, then we've got
Can
our
we
plan.
jump into
Let's
it?
use it. Let's do the
Yeah,
time
let's-
and get it work.
Yeah, David, do you have the link? Can we
Yeah.
bring up
Yeah.
the
Give me
investment one?
1 second.
I think like I know that we don't have the questions built out for the other sections, but I also think that we need to kind of prove the model first because otherwise we're just gonna have to go back and redo the questions, I think, once we understand what some of the gaps are.
Yeah, we do have the base though, Corbin, right? The work that you did in the past, the Word document.
Okay. I'm gonna break in here and say we're not working on structure, we're not working on process, we're working on content. I'm surprised Abby didn't jump on us. Don't get into that rabbit hole. Limited amount of time. So
Yeah.
I put in the link, and what I propose is that we, for a given level, let's figure out if we have enough questions for it, or that we can tell from that section. And there's we added a tab last week with just we want to add more to the intro, but at least there's a link to the maturity model, so you can not have to dig it up.
Sorry, is the idea that we would be using all of these questions, or what subset would?
Exactly. Well, first of all, I would say, do we have enough here, rough cut, to actually make a determination of what level someone's at for each of the 4 levels?
Okay.
Or
I think I just see a
someone has
hand
their hand
raised
up.
as well,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
just want to make sure, like, gets asked.
Yeah, I was just thinking for next meeting, maybe we could at the end of this have a plan for what we want to do before the meeting, and then also sort of a set of questions that we want everyone to look into and have sort of a meaning of, not meaning, like an opinion of. For example, do we have enough content for, like, after the work we've done up until the next meeting? Do we have enough for saying that we've covered all the areas in investment, for example? Just
So
again,
basically a statement of where we've gotten with this section, and
yes,
if we're satisfied. So basically we need some sort of rubric for judging each section.
yeah, I was just feeling for me, because I've done some work on filling in questions, but if I had also prepared, like, mentally on answering that questions that you just asked,
Okay.
that would be, better prepared. So maybe something like that.
Okay.
Would
I
you?
can write that up and kind of put it in the introduction slide or tab. So
Yeah.
I don't mean to try and lead this. If anyone wants to take on going through questions, or if we want to take a few minutes to look at both documents, we could do it that way.
There's a few that have questions in them, David. Maybe we should focus on some of those ones first. I mean, I was going to add not questions, comments. I was going to add a comment about row 7. I know other people have kind of made the same comment. It feels like measurement shouldn't be in the invest section.
Well, but
there
I
is a
think
measurement tab.
There is
Yeah.
a measurement tab, but is it relevant to what we're trying to assess? And do we can have duplication. That's something we discussed a few weeks ago that Abby mentioned. We can have duplication, we can deduplicate later, right?
So, like, the way that I'm thinking about this is I'm kind of looking at the investment tab of the maturity model and trying to think what part of this is the question pointing at. So like the first question in here is very direct, right? Because almost the language of the three answers directly comes from the characteristics of the maturity model, where it says, how would you describe the people building the platform? Well, there's a comment on that. It doesn't exactly say that, but maybe it should. And then the language comes from those characteristics. It's like the level 1 characteristics is it's like tiger teams that are short-lived. And so it's kind of, I can kind of like map it. I can see where it's coming from. So I suppose my question would be, does this map to something in the investment tab of the model?
Yeah, they should for the most part. I think when I was putting some questions in, what I was trying to caution against is just taking what's in the document and making it in a question form, right? Like that doesn't really change anything. I don't think, right? I don't think it adds much value. So I think we do need to, I think what David's point was earlier is we do need to make sure that we're testing like each level in some way by asking the questions, right? So it's more of that coverage type conversation. Do we have enough coverage to say at the end, if I ask you these 10 questions, I can easily tell which level you're in, and which areas you need to invest in if you wanted to get to the next level, for example.
Yeah.
So the model doesn't talk about some of the metrics that are listed in that row, though, right? I've just looked at the investment tab in the model, and there's nothing there. That's why I thought it was more of a measure question, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's valuable for locating yourself on the measurement section for sure. I think maybe we should move it. I don't think it helps you tell where you are on the investment side.
No.
But obviously we would hope that organizations achieve both. Like,
well, we've seen, I mean, we saw in SLC some very different ways of measuring. You know, there was someone talking in Platform Engineering Day. There were the execs from, I think it was US Bank. They were all about measurement, right? Everything was about measurement for them. But when I went and asked some of the substance questions, there was very little of that. It was all about measurement and about using Adobe Analytics to get measurement.
So I just struck out that question for now. I didn't delete it, but let's just leave it there kind of in the parking lot for now.
Cool.
There's a couple questions in here, like line 14 and 15 that don't have answers described.
Those were, I think those were the ones I added in, but I didn't put in any options. They were a bit more free flow, really just to try and understand how people are funded, and maybe we need to put some leading questions in there for sure, or leading answers. What I was trying to get out of there was to find out any of the people that don't have a proper funded cycle, right? Some of the things that we've been talking about. So it's side of desk. And the 15, the one below it, was basically trying to find out if it was also a side of desk exercise because they only had small amounts of people's time allocated to it. I think there's a lot of learning I've certainly had about fractional time doesn't really work on big initiatives. You're better to have, you know, the dedicated core team. So I was trying to understand where they were at, because if they've only got fractional time, they're probably only in the POC stage. If they think they're in the actual, you know, proper enablement stage and they're still operating on fractional time, they're probably not as mature as they think or need
And
to
that's
be.
provisional, right? We have that in it's voluntary or temporary. And
Yeah.
like I guess we could argue that the term fractional isn't in there, but you can argue that that would be similar in
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I felt like there was another question that had this, but I don't see it here.
I thought
I think
so
line
too.
5
Like
is
there
the
was
closest thing.
13 is. So those are all yours, 13, 14, 15, Chris?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The budget one was really trying to get to, you know, do you have exec sponsorship?
Yeah.
Do you
All
have
right.
budget?
And I think the only thing I had been thinking about this one was, we're saying specifically platform as a product, and maybe it needs to be a little less specific to that and say, are you funded on a project basis or a capacity basis, right? Or in a flow basis, or however you want to say,
Yeah, I agree.
not project that will be disbanded.
And I think it'd be
Yeah.
good to like remove the assumption people know what project versus product is. And so doing something like, is there a set of work which would, remove the need for this team? Like if you complete a set of work, would this team no longer be necessary or something to that effect,
Yeah.
right? Like what is the
Is
definition
this
of
a
project
finite,
versus?
is this a finite team?
Yeah, exactly. Something along those lines. But
Mhm.
yeah,
I
I think
where,
this is, yeah.
where it was coming from on that one when I originally put it in, there had been some people talking about, you talk to finance and you get a business case. And some of the feedback I'd been given is, but that's not how it works in large orgs. That isn't how it works in our org and in financial services orgs. Some of this, it comes out of our discretionary funding pots that are sometimes bigger than some small organizations' entire budget, right? And we've got a very different approach from what people perceive as you need to go and talk to finance. I never talked to finance about funding, so it was trying to understand those different models at different sizes. Because small orgs will have to talk to finance, absolutely, but larger orgs, it could be discretionary funding. It could just be funded activity that the team does because they've already got existing headcount budget. I was trying to tease some of that out to understand the maturity as well.
Yeah, some of the
is that-
CTOs I spoke to said it's not really a budget. We just picked a number of people and redirected them onto this effort. But then you're kind of like, I presume it's just as easy to then redirect them back off of it if they change their mind.
Yeah, so that's fungible resource pool model, right?
Yeah.
Well, that still plays into, is this a finite or a bounded team, right? And don't get into project or whatever. Just say, is there an end state, or an end for this team that builds or supports the platform?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. It's on right, David. Right? Is there an end for this team? Exactly what Abby was saying. When you've done your work, does that mean you've disbanded?
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's good to know if is this a project to you? Because if you start putting different angles on it, it sort of turns into a loaded question.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we want you to answer this.
Do you have a North Star that is multi-year or something? Like, there's something there. But one thing I'm noticing is
I meet many platform teams that don't really have a North Star. They're like, well, we wanted to improve this.
yeah, even that. Cool.
I'm putting in a fixed end point after which they will be disbanded. I'll just make it ugly for now. We can wordsmith it later.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone has any clue as to what the question should be on row 9. It looks like it's a duplicate, but it's not because the answers are referring to something other than what's being asked. So it was probably a multi-user editing session problem where the cells end up getting overwritten.
I see it. I was looking through the history. I was just looking for that one, Steve. So
9
It
seems
does.
related to the one I put in down on like 20. 9 and 20 are very closely related.
it says, what is the primary focus of the platform engineering team?
Cool. I see someone's just gone
I'm
to that
editing
cell.
it,
Is that
yeah.
about to get edited?
Yeah, what is the primary focus of the platform engineering team?
Cool.
Is that an investment question?
It is.
Yeah, because it'll you either come out of operational or capital, right? Budgets from a very fundamental perspective.
It's investing in the people. The investment in the people.
Interesting. Because ours is a transformational project, right? So there's both CapEx and OpEx. There's a platform team, there's an SRE team, there's an enablement team, and then there's all the different platform teams. So at scale, we do it maybe, we've got a lot more people involved, and the primary focus of the platform engineering team, which one?
I think probably if you were using the assessment, you would probably run it for each platform rather than for the whole organization. Because
I've been running it at the moment at the what we call the PAP team, so the platform as a product team, which is really about the products we're releasing to the customers. But part of our primary focus is that transformational journey. So, okay, so this is an interesting one for me. Some of the at scale dynamics of this.
yeah, it might be interesting to see what would happen if you ran it higher
Oh, will
or
be.
lower,
Yeah.
and like what does that change? That might be interesting feedback as well to kind of put into this process.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I want to do with this or the survey, is get the different teams to go off and do their perspective.
Well, remember, this isn't a survey, this is an assessment. So we should be careful about us extracting data versus people being able to decide where they are. And we should go with like the minimum amount of stuff for people to figure out where they are, because, if you make it too long, they might not be able to get them. This is the first tab, right?
Yeah.
But I had to go for a couple of minutes. If you had any questions to 17 or 18, those are mine.
I liked your question about does it welcome expansion? So that's kind of like the inner source contribution model that I talk about. That wasn't one of the answers. That was all.
Where does it map into is the question. Like, does it, in investment, does it give us an idea of what level that puts people in? Is it another way of asking about an enabled ecosystem, and similar to the one I put in about do you use or enable other platforms?
17?
Yeah, I think it's scalable, David. It starts feeding into.
Yeah, I feel to a degree, yes, but I also feel like it's more a matter of how centralized investment in. I mean, if because efforts within compliance and security are more, in my head, something that sort of the C-level is pushing. It's more of a central type of investment. If that effort is actually put into the platform instead of just thrown down on each team or thrown down on the platform, but if those are brought in or taken in as part of developing the platform, it's a very solid type of investment from the leadership in my head.
And if you've got more involvement, right, more like sort of inner sourcing collaboration, you're going to be higher up the levels that are in the maturity model. So you're definitely going to be, operational, scalable, optimizing. You're going to be at those levels, not just level one.
Yeah, and it's another type of investment than having teams contributing with functionality, because that's a community-based approach, but this is more like an organizational effort.
So this is somewhat like 10 in a way, right? Does your platform initiative unlock or intend enterprise-wide, company-wide capabilities or outcomes?
I guess
No, I don't know that either one or the other, but it seems related, right?
Yeah, I would say so. Like 10 is like 17 would be a category or like a more specific phrasing of what 10 could entail, but I feel like 10 is very vague.
So I read 10 in a big enterprise setting as, is it creating centralized services that people can consume in a standardized way? That was kind of how I read 10. I read 17 as more about how people are contributing to that, and where does that sit on the maturity levels, right, 1 to 4, and trying to assess whether they're kind of closer to 3 and 4, which is the SMEs all contributing to building those products.
That's right.
So maybe 10's the one that needs a wee bit of wordsmithy.
I just put a comment about what is. I'm sorry. Am I mispronouncing your name, Oystein? Or
it's fine.
okay.
Yeah.
I think the
Please
think
share
the
how you'd like us to
intention-
pronounce your name, just to
Yeah.
be clear.
What?
Oystein.
How do you pronounce your name, just to make sure?
Oystein.
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 That's the
Oystein.
American
Oystein.
Okay.
best attempt I can possibly try.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. I want to make sure we're calling people by their proper names when they
Yeah, yeah.
participate.
I
So,
just
thank you.
wonder, 17, doesn't that touch into the adoption one with contributional, or what's the term we use on that one?
Which
Participatory.
line?
Participatory. 17.
I think the way Arstein was talking about this, he saw, and I put that in a comment. He was seeing more as, is the platform seen as the way to get things done, and therefore when we have new requirements, like compliance or security, we invest in that through the platform. So we direct, the C-level would direct the, instead of telling compliance, go out and figure out how to secure all the apps, it's like, go out and figure out how the platform can secure all the apps.
So number 10 relates more to the operations tab, and we could probably just move number 10 into there. We're just having a look at it at the moment, if it's on about, as I
It's-
said, kind of central
it's-
services.
It's an investment question though, because a lot of times the platform will spring up in a line of business team. Right? And the scope of that platform is for card services.
No, I hear you. We've got that
Right.
problem. Yeah.
We
So-
can
so,
duplicate,
yes.
we can duplicate too.
Duplicate question then,
Yeah.
right? I think it deserves a place in.
So we're
that's
at
why-
three.
that-
We're at 3
That's why
minutes.
it's like more is the scope of the platform for to support a team or a function, right? It could be a machine learning platform, right? That only supports machine learning workloads. Like, is it an enterprise capability or is it not an enterprise capability? That's the intention. And if we could reword it, but the intention is to determine the scope and impact.
Right.
As it relates to the investment, right? That is the company investing in a capability that is for the enterprise or for like a line of business or a team.
So with a couple of minutes left, I think we need to go back to Abby's question of whether or not this format is getting us where we need to be. And it seems like we got a lot of useful discussion today, but do people think A, is a half hour enough? Or do we need to specify more more structured out of band thinking for people so that we come into these? I was just thinking, we could have like a voting system. Do we have enough for, levels 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And sort of decide that as
Yeah.
opposed to, and how much discussion do we need before we can have that decision? And do we need multiple half-hour meetings or 1 or 2 1-hour meetings? So
I don't think half an hour is enough. We've just proven that. Two half-hour sessions might be good, or
mhm.
1 hour session would have probably plowed through it, because we did make a lot of good progress there.
Yeah, I
Yep.
feel that we got the flywheel spun up, and
Yeah.
then we kind
Here's
of
the
like
rug.
slamming the brakes on.
I will say the original intention for the half hours, or like the original proposal, was to review what already existed more so than to like create as well. And I feel like we're still in a little bit of creation mode right now, in my opinion. Like, I get that we're reviewing things that like text on the board, but like we're still in like really early understanding of the text on the board and refiltering of it, and that, which I do consider part of creation more so than like editing or reviewing. And so like I'm wondering, the one piece of thing that's come out in the new suggestions by the CNCF, or the new actually guidelines of how to do sort of big publications through the CNCF, is to basically create a core group of people to create the content, which happens fairly fast. So that's in, let's call it weeks, and then do heavy review, and that's in more the weeks to months
Right.
category. But what we did with the maturity model, and we're trying to do with the assessment here, is do a bit more crowdsourcing of the content. And I'm curious if this is not working so well in this current climate, and whether or not we need to do the sort of smaller, like, and the group could be this plus or minus a couple people, depending on if people want to be involved and can commit to it and whatever else. Like, it doesn't have to be 1 or 2 people. It just having a set group of people whose job is to content create, because then there's a straw man to pull apart. And we did that with Corbin's, but because of the switch from true false to multiple choice, it feels like we don't yet have a straw man in this new format. And I wonder if we need a similarly qualitied, similarly complete, similarly like tried and tested straw man that Corbin provided us in true false, but we need that in multiple choice before we can do a great job of like welcoming new voices at the scale that we're talking about right now. So just putting it out there. I'm not demanding that that's what we do, but I'm suggesting that like that is something that has been presented by the CNCF, and they have a lot of context and experience of watching other things in other working groups and other tags be successful. And
So if we do that, Abby, right? I mean, we've done a good discussion today. We've seen there's a lot of content. We're kind of broadly okay with the content that's there.
Yep.
We're ready to do homework now and do the next section. We'll probably find out next week because that section's new. None of us have actually contributed much to that yet.
how far can we get?
How
Yeah,
far can we get? Will be a truer measure, I think.
I think
Yeah,
that's
I
great.
mean,
And
I
like as
think-
I said, we don't have to make the decision today. I just want to get in people's minds to think about what's the most effective thing. So yeah, go for it, Corbin.
Yeah,
I
it's
apologize.
gonna take us a long time, I think, if we keep going at this way. I agree, like, it might make sense to just get to something and then like iterate on that.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, there's way too many questions, so I think we need to narrow it down to like 10. Just to make it like bite-sized and something that people can go through. And we have to always remember that this is not intended to like give all the answers. This is in broad strokes trying to get people to, I'm roughly in this place and these are some things that I could work on, right? That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And that could be the vote, right?
And
Here's-
well, I would
here's
take
the
away a
breadth of
vote
content,
personally.
vote.
Just to call out, I'll take away. I would propose and be pretty strong-handed on taking away a vote from like the leadership point of view, because if we look back to the way the maturity model evolved and was created, we crowdsourced a whole bunch of information, and then a couple of us squirreled away and took all the information from having attended all the meetings, been involved in the conversations, been involved in like understanding the why behind what we were doing, and took all that, but just a couple people, and created the like, here's our final straw man based
Right.
on all this crowdsourcing. And I think that's maybe what we're marching towards here. We now have a bunch of really good context. We have this video we can return to. We have a bunch of good questions. We know it's not quite in ready form. Let's move on. Let's get the next 4 sections in that state. And once we have that state for all 4 sections where we have some great content, some great context, but they're not really settled yet into a like coherent, cohesive thing, small group of people can make that evolution that has been deeply involved in the whole process and bring it back to the group and go, hey, we think we've included everything people have talked about. We totally took on board all the things, but we needed to make this coherent and cohesive. So this is what we did. Now tear it apart. Yeah. So, okay. So what I'm hearing is that there's a proposal that we sort of step away for today, try and add some questions into adoption being the next section, see if people are able to actually commit and get good questions in there to the point where there's a decent conversation for the next meeting, which is in next week at this time. And then based on that, we can make the evaluation of, will it take us 4 or 8 more weeks to get the content creation done before we can start doing that consolidation and like, final like sort of draft that can go in for proper review. And is that a pace we're happy to work at? Is it a pace we can keep? We can make all that decision next week, but we're basically doing a test run that everyone here, and I'll post it or somebody can, I don't need to be the one to post it. Somebody here can post into the working group channel, hey, this is the goal for next week. By Tuesday, please add questions to adoption. So if somebody could raise their hand to do that, that'd be great. And we'll see. Cool.
Dave.
So David or Chris or yeah.
Dave. He was
Cool.
up
So
first.
and then
Okay.
we'll see. And we can make that call next week. And I think we should make that call next week, right? Rather than continue to let it sort of drag. That's our like, this is a good test week, right? And we'll get some good feedback and good ideas. So
And this will go in the working group platforms, not the PAP researchers. I think
this
that's
is,
confusing
I made
things
a
bit.
comment in there. This is nothing to do with the PAP, the PAP
Yeah.
research, platform as a product research. This is a completely
Yeah.
separate initiative. So I'm the sponsoring lead for this piece of work, and Colin is the sponsoring lead for the PAP research work. So that doesn't mean that I'm in charge or that I need to do all the work or anything else like that. I'm just here to make sure that we move the thing forward. Everyone feels supported. Everyone feels included. Voices heard, all that kind of stuff. And Colin has the same role on the other project. So, yes.
Cool.
Cool. Thanks all. Good
All
luck
right.
getting your homework done.
Great chat.
See you later.
You're always
See
so
you
nice.
next
I'd be
week,
like,
y'all.
here
Have a
you
good
go.
one.
Cheers, guys.
See you.
See ya.